The Solar Podcast is brought to you by Continental Energy Solutions. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Today on the Solar Podcast, architectural solar. Solar PV is the fastest growing source of new energy on the grid, bar none. And most of us think of solar as black panels that go on your roof, but there are many more applications, some of them stunningly beautiful. My guest today is Ryan Schaub. He is the Director of Sales for a company called Lumos Solar from Colorado. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
You and I started chatting about a project we're working on in Chicago a couple months ago, and I am just itching to do an architectural solar project. We have done a couple of what we call building integrated awning projects, but for the most part, we do traditional flat roof commercial solar.
Sure.
And unfortunately, you can't see most of those projects because they're above our heads at 30 feet in the air. But you, on the other hand, work on projects that are, for the most part, highly visible and therefore need to be visually interesting and architecturally stunning. And they are that. So you can look forward to that. If you're listening to this on YouTube, we are about to show some of the most beautiful solar projects in the world that Lumos has created. Before we do that, though, Ryan, please give our listeners a little background on yourself and how you got interested and into the solar industry.
Yeah, sure. So in a previous life, I was a park ranger. So I've got my degree at the University of Missouri in Columbia in natural resource management, and worked at Rocky Mountain National Park and some state parks in Missouri, Vermont, and Colorado. And, loved the industry, loved working in parks and the outdoors, but, was looking for something a little more stable. It was a very seasonal industry before you really get started. And, was really always interested in renewable energy. And so I decided to take a course out in California, out in Grass Valley, California, at SMA's old headquarters out there. And it was the SEI course, so Solar Energy International, another organization based out of Colorado, and took a week-long course on how to become a solar installer. And when I got back from that course, I was able to get hired on at Lighthouse Solar in Boulder, Colorado, and started off as an installer. And that's how I got my start into this business, was working up on rooftops at that time and installing solar electric and solar thermal systems.
That's one of the things that I love about the solar industry is that so many of us solar professionals are passionate for nature and the environment. I myself was a forest ecologist before I got interested in business. The threads that connect my careers are technology, people, and sustainability, and solar is certainly one that connects all of those dots.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I just can't wait to go to work every day. It's a wonderful thing to be part of the energy transition and cleaning the air and cleaning the environment and making humanity a more sustainable society.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, that's one of the motivators for me too, is knowing that we're making a difference every day.
Exactly. So, and I'm glad you mentioned SEI. I have taken some of their training as well. Wonderful organization. So just Google that, Solar Energy International, and they have both virtual and face-to-face trainings out there in Colorado. Sounds like maybe in California as well, but and then just on the organizational side, while we're talking about organizations, check out SEIA, also not to be confused. That's a Solar Energy Industries Association, which is our primary industry association for commercial solar, certainly. So Ryan, Lumos Solar, what is it? And before we go to the visuals, because the visuals really tell a wonderful story, but give us some high-level background on the company and, how is it that Lumos differentiates itself?
Sure. So Lumos Solar was founded in 2006. We're really an old dog here in the solar industry. It really was born out of the installation business. So we were installing, commodity solar modules up on rooftops. And one of the common, feedback that we were getting from interested homeowners is they did not like the look of, framed commodity modules up on the rooftop, or they didn't want people drilling holes into their roof. So one of the demands that we were seeing from the market is for high aesthetic solar that also provided some functionality, with shade structures, canopies or pergolas in the backyard or carports out front to provide that shade, shelter, and then clean energy power production all in the same beautiful package. So that's really where Lumos was founded from, and wanted to deliver really differentiated products that actually look good and provide that functionality at the same time. So we've really specialized in overhead solar, and as you mentioned, highly visible solar projects. That's our specialty. So we're more of the building applied photovoltaics. So we're not going to be the actual envelope of a building. We're not going to provide a thermal barrier or anything like that. But for outdoor rated, canopies on top of buildings or carports, covering parking lots, awnings on the sides of buildings, vertical facades, that's really our specialty.
Cool. Well, we're going to put some visuals on screen here so people can get a taste for what we're talking about. And you'll see many photos here of canopies and carports and building facades. And so tell us, and this is going to be a little bit of a whirlwind, I think. I don't know. Will it continue to auto spool, or can I control that?
It should, but you can click on that arrow to move to the next slide too.
Okay. All right. So, some of our listeners will have been to some of these sites. You've done some very popular facilities like football stadiums, but why don't you address what is your core technology here and what our listeners are seeing?
Yeah, you bet. So a lot of these images here are showing the LSX module system. That is our frameless through-bolt module design. That was launched over a decade ago. So that's been our kind of flagship product, is providing that frameless through-bolt design, a really unique design in the industry. And when we first launched it, there's really nothing like it in the market at all. So, as you can see, that frameless panel just provides, unparalleled aesthetics. And we provide an integrated module and racking system, which separates us from most other module manufacturers, is that we're producing a fully integrated module and rail system. Our rails provide integrated wireways, and those wireways conceal the junction boxes and all the conductors. So, looking overhead at these projects, you don't see those junction boxes and wires dangling. It's a very clean look. And then also just making it, an easier, friendlier installation process as well, where all that wire management is taken care of. The other benefit of that frameless through-bolt design is that there's only 1/4-inch gaps between those panes of glass, which we can easily seal off to make it a weather-tight overhead array. So really, the benefits of the LSX design is aesthetics, sealability, functionality, but also durability as well. Even though it's a frameless panel, it uses 6mm thick tempered glass. So it's actually the strongest module available. It's been installed in South Florida and the Caribbean and 180-mile-per-hour wind zones. It's been installed in Buffalo, New York, or Edmonton, Alberta for extreme snow loads. So that's the other thing that really separates that module from the competition.
When you see a Lumos project, one of the first things that stands out is that the panels themselves are allowing light to pass through the panel, which creates a different effect. It's not just a uniform dark sheet. The goal of a solar panel, let's face it, is to absorb sunlight. And so right. Most solar panels are doing just that, and they are not letting light pass through them. They want those photons to convert to electrons. But in your case, you want some light to pass through. Talk a little bit about the trade-offs, because there are trade-offs, right, when you do that.
Sure. So yeah, with the LSX module design, about 12% of that light is passing through that module. And so it's a pretty standard 60 cell format module. We spread apart a couple columns of cells for that through-bolt hole in the glass. And so that's why we're getting some additional daylighting to pass through. And the reason we're providing that daylighting is aesthetics. If you have a pergola in the backyard or a carport, you don't want it to be a dark, black cave underneath that array. So having some of that dappled light come through is a really nice aesthetic. And yeah, it's a slight trade-off on efficiencies, perhaps, but really not dramatic. We're still utilizing very high efficient monocrystalline monofacial cells with the LSX system, and then we do have the other module system, which is the GSX module, and in that system we do offer various daylighting options. So we can start at the most energy dense solution, which is the max power density, the max amount of cells in that format, and that's only about 4% daylighting. And then we're getting some additional backside production with the bifacial cells. But then we also have kind of a sliding scale of energy density to daylighting. So if we want more daylighting from an aesthetics perspective, or we've also seen a rise of agrivoltaics, where we're combining solar with agriculture. And a lot of plants obviously need those photons as well, but they do really well with a mix of shade and sun. And so just dialing in those daylighting requirements for the plants below is maybe another option to look at greater daylighting options and trading off the efficiencies for daylighting.
I'm going to put the product landing pages on the screen here too. So let's go back to the LSX module system. Mm-hmm. Let me get that on. And as you mentioned, this is your flagship product. You've mentioned several times the through bolt mounting, which is shown here. So that's just referring to the way that the panel is then mounted to the racking system. Is that right?
Exactly right. So instead of a typical, framed module with shared clamps and end clamps that are clamping that frame to the rails below, our attachment method is that through bolt through the glass. So there's actually 4 holes in the middle of the LSX module that we're through bolting through and into the LSX rails. And those rails have nuts in the typical T-bolt channel of a rail. Those are pre-indexed for the installer with rubber isolator pads. And those pads protect the frameless panel from the aluminum rail below. So that is the module to rail, mounting interface, is that through bolt.
Got it. And you also mentioned integrated wire management. I'm curious how that works. And that is another differentiating feature of your technology and your system, is that you do not see solar panel wires really almost at all on a carport or other Lumos project.
Exactly right. So the rails that we provide, and you can kind of see a side profile there, there's basically a strut profile section of that rail, and that's the wireway section. You can kind of see the the MC4 connector sticking out of that there in that image there. Yep. And so on the module design, we selected a low profile, more of a rectangular junction box, and we moved that down a little bit as opposed to most commodity modules. And so it's closer to where those through bolting holes are in the module. And so when the rail is attached below that module, it's that wireway is directly underneath that junction box. And so that's what's concealing that from view. And then the leads can just drop right into that wireway, and all the home run wiring can be fully concealed within those rail channels.
That's very cool. Very elegant.
Thank you.
And then you mentioned the GSX, which is a newer system, right?
Correct. Yep. The GSX is a newer system. The main differentiators between those two systems is going to be form factor and then the bifacial cells. So I describe LSX as more of a floating glass look, where the glass is flying by the ends of the rails on the tops and the bottoms. And then even on the end conditions, the glass is flying by the ends of those rails by about 2.5 inches. It only comes in the one form factor, 60 cell format, and it only comes with the one daylighting option, which is 12% daylighting. And then it does have a transparent back sheet, but it is monofacial cells. So a lot of people conflate bifacial with a clear backsheet or a glass backsheet, and that's not the case with LSX. It does provide daylighting and nice dappled light below, but it is just producing power from the sunny side. We launched the GSX system a few years ago, and that is glass on glass construction and does utilize bifacial cells. So we can pick up another 10 to 30% additional backside production, depending on the reflectivity of the surface below those modules. And then in that system, we offer, like I mentioned, various daylighting options. And so the GSX modules are available in both a 72 cell and a 60 cell format. And then within those formats, kind of a sliding scale of energy density to daylighting, depending on what the architect is looking for, the designer or homeowner or business owner is looking for.
So for those of us in the audience who are a little more on the technical side, what would be the delta in kWh per kWp with the LSX versus the GSX?
Good question. I mean, basically, from an efficiency side, just on the front side production, they're pretty equivalent. So really the gains are going to be that bifacial gain on the back. And that's more driven by, are these modules mounted over a high albedo, highly reflective material, white concrete, white TPO rooftops, snow, water, things like that. And that's where we're going to get those additional gains from the backsides of the GSX modules. And that's, roughly that 10 to 30% additional backside production.
Okay. So at face value, it seems to me, it's not an easy decision to make. I assume there's some price difference. Is that what drives the choice of product in most projects?
Yeah, I would say it's a mixture. It can be a combination of factors. GSX does carry a premium over LSX, so budget may be one driver and choosing, one system over the other. There's certainly a lot of overlap. Both systems can be sealed off to make weather tight. Both systems have the integrated wire management and concealed junction boxes and conductors. Both systems allow daylighting to pass through. So one is aesthetic. Some people like the look of the floating glass of what LSX can provide, and some people don't. Some people like the look of GSX, which has more of a standard pattern of cells, and then all the racking is around the perimeter of that glass. And then sometimes it is that bifacial, where maybe a project will really reap some of those additional backside production rewards of the bifacial cell. And so that might drive us into using the GSX system.
Let's talk about architecture and what you can or cannot do with a Lumos solar panel and racking system. I'm going to put on screen one of your, I call this a carport, but it's a walkway in, I believe, Miami Bayfront Park. And it's an outdoor amphitheater. You see here what looks like a carport structure, and it's obviously curved because this is a curved amphitheater and it just wraps right around. Mm-hmm. It looks like basically a flat structure, though, that's cantilevered. So in some ways, this is very similar to other carports, although you don't see many curved carports. There are other manufacturers that can do a curved structure. I'm curious how that is achieved, honestly, now that I've been thinking about it, because as in a circle, right, there's slices of pie, basically, right, in order to make that turn. And if you have a fixed width row, so that there's some gap that has to be accounted for at the right side of this where my mouse is. How do you navigate that curve like that?
Yeah, this is a great example of the further capabilities that Lumos can provide. Primarily we're a module and racking manufacturer. And so, we work with architects every day on how to integrate our modules and rails into their designs. But we also provide our own pre-engineered bolt together structural kits, and that's called our Solarscapes. And so this structure here was designed, engineered, and fabricated by Lumos and sent down to Miami Bayfront, where it was installed by SemPower for Florida Power and Light. and they were wanting this, really unique curved design to match the aesthetics of that site. And so we were able to adapt kind of our standard off-the-shelf long span solar-scape structures, what you see there, and we adapted it to the curved design intent that they were after. And there actually is a little bit of tilt there, as you can see. And exactly right, in between the columns of GSX modules, we've got custom infill panels that kind of fill in those kind of pizza wedges shapes between those columns of modules. And so that's how we're able to achieve a fully planar location there, where everything is in plane with each other, and we're able to follow that curve and still provide a weather tight surface above. And so Lumos can provide custom shapes and sizes with non-photovoltaic panels. So we're not a true BIPV module manufacturer where our modules are a standard size and a standard footprint. We don't do custom PV glass. But when it comes to curved canopies or other unique design elements, we can provide custom shapes and sizes and even colors and things of that nature of these custom infill panels that do integrate into the racking system. So it's a fully integrated system with solar panels and non-photovoltaic, infill panels at the same time.
Yeah, and then
similar solution here as well.
Yeah, and then you can see here that this is the Marlboro Electric Co-op. Looks like a carport. It's curved in 2 dimensions, though, right? It's not only going curved in the east-west; it's going north-south as well. Talk a little bit about how you're achieving that.
Yeah, exactly right. So, as I mentioned, we have kind of our off-the-shelf design and engineered structures with our SolarScapes. And, those are typically rectangular, standard rectangular shapes. We also offer custom design and engineering services for custom structures. And that's what we're looking at here at this co-op in South Carolina. We worked with Radiant Solar out of Atlanta, Georgia, who did the installation of this beautiful carport. And yeah, the co-op just wanted a stellar, showpiece of a carport in front of their headquarters. And that's, the design intent that came to us was they wanted a curve to follow their curved parking lot, but then also the curved canopy as well. And so this used our LSX module system. And again, you can see kind of those custom infill wedge pieces next to the actual PV modules. And we're using the same through bolt mounting technique with our modules into the same rail below. So same LSX rails and same mounting mechanism as the LSX module. And we're integrating that all into one system. And that's another benefit of that frameless through bolt design, is that each individual module can be mounted independently. We're not using shared clamps for the neighbor modules or the neighbor infill panels. So that's how we can achieve curving those rectangles around in that curve in one direction and following the curve in the north-south direction as well, as that independent placement of each module.
And you're achieving a weatherproof seal, so to speak, just by really tightly putting the 2 pieces of glass side by side, or is there some kind of a gasket between them?
Yeah, it's a good question. So with our modules, there's going to be about a 1/4 inch gap between those panes of glass. So we want to have some kind of space in between those panes of glass just for any kind of thermal expansion. We don't want to have the glass edge right up to the neighbor glass edge. So there's a 1/4 inch gap, but there's no shared mid clamps in the way. And the solution that we provide is a transparent UV stable film from 3M. It's basically a tape-based product that goes on top of the glass to seal off those 1/4 inch gaps, and that's how we're achieving that weatherproofing. Folks can take it up a notch and hire an independent third-party professional window glazer who could do a silicon joint seal between those panes of glass as kind of an elevated solution. But the benefit of the transparent film is that you don't see it. It's easy to install. Has about the similar lifespan as silicon caulking, but it's much more in the wheelhouse of a solar installer than, say, a professional window glazer.
Very good. And for our listeners who Can't see that. We're just at the Lumos website. It's lumossolar.com, LUMOSSOLAR.com. Just an amazing plethora of types of structures. And as you and I have discussed, Ryan, one of the holy grails in the solar industry is truly building integrated solar. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because there are, in bigger cities where you have high rises that are clad in glass, there is the potential of cladding a building in solar glass. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious if you all at Lumos are going after that space?
Not today, no. Like I mentioned, we're more in the building applied PV side of things versus the BIPV. That BIPV market, I think, is going to be expanding. It's definitely a bigger market in Europe, where I think their incentives allow for more of that BIPV application. Typically, back to the efficiencies that you mentioned, that PV glass that does provide that transparency, those efficiencies are not very high. But when you can utilize, we're going to clad that building in glass anyway, might as well use it solar glass. That does provide a thermal barrier and can provide some additional performance. But yeah, we're not looking at that BIPV glass at this stage. We're really focused on more of the architectural structural side of things, as you can see. Really utilizing, maybe underdeveloped resources like parking lots, or we can provide that shade and shelter. So yeah, our modules are not rated to be, like skylights or anything like that. They're not insulated glass units. So they're really intended for outdoor rated areas, non-conditioned space.
So what other system types or project types should we talk about so our audience can get the full picture, so to speak, of what are the applications for Lumos?
Yeah. So, we've discussed the modules and racking systems that can be installed on structures by others, existing structures, our own SolarScape structures. And then we just launched 2 kind of standalone products. So, typically our modules are more project specific, really unique project-based solutions, vertical facades and things of that nature. So this is an outdoor rated stairwell. That's why you're kind of seeing that more of a BIPV application there, but it is an outdoor rated stairwell that they utilized. Mm-hmm. And similar constraint on this building in Denver is they didn't have much space on the rooftop to, deploy solar. And so instead, they use the southeast and southwest facing walls of the stairwell. And it provides a really cool aesthetic, where especially at night, where the light is passing through those modules as well, which, this building's right off of I-25, one of the major thoroughfares going through Denver. So, it's a great showpiece and, showing that this building is, going green with some solar applications.
I have to say that's really cool. I love the look of that stairwell. And well, are there any other projects specifically you'd like to call out?
Yeah, I was actually going to mention a couple new products that we just launched, which are our standalone products, which is the Solar Zone and Solar Stop. The Solar Zone is our off-grid charging station / table. So, using the LSX modules as the umbrella to power LED lighting, and then wireless charging for phones, and 120 outlets for laptops. So the design of this product is really to simplify charging stations for maybe university campuses, corporate campuses, providing some resiliency for communities that are maybe hit by hurricanes and things like that. So this is a fully off-grid charging station. You can integrate, Wi-Fi into these. You don't need foundations. So it's a very easy to deploy structure to provide shade and charging in a very easy package.
And does that include a battery then?
Exactly right. So since this is an off-grid system, the battery and charge controller and all that is in the base of that structure. And that's what's powering the lights at night and powering the charging capabilities for, your devices. And then we recently just also launched the Solar Stop, which is similar solution, but aimed for transit shelters. So, bus stops or things of that nature. So again, fully off grid, no need to run, conduit or connect to the grid. And, again, that battery will power lighting and signage, and then also charging capabilities as well while you're waiting for, the bus or train to pick you up.
I love it. I can think of so many applications when, you really don't want to run grid power to the structure. Here you're seeing a bus stop, and so it's a little microgrid, and great for, as you mentioned, resiliency. I can imagine in an outage, people would be streaming to these things en masse if they had chargers and outlets on them that you can, charge your computer on, or otherwise get connectivity, so to speak.
Absolutely. We're seeing a great demand for that, especially in the Southeast with, hurricanes, where the grid can go down. This would be a great, both of these solutions would be a great solution to get power, charge up your device, let your family know you're okay, connect to the Wi-Fi, and, get to the internet connection. So kind of, bridging that digital to digital divide, and then providing that connectivity and, really that resilience for communities.
And then the color scheme options are many. I have the color palette on screen here, and that's also another nice feature that you offer for, most of your structures, right? Is that they can be powder coated in any, pretty much any color you can imagine.
Exactly right. Yeah. So you can, we offer these kind of standard colors, and we can also do exact custom color matches as well. So, just depending on the project, we can use off-the-shelf colors and, powder coat our structures or these tables or shelters, really any color to match branding or things of that nature. So really providing that, again, just focused on that aesthetic as well. It's got to look good at the same time as producing power.
In the greater scheme of things, Ryan, when you're considering let's just say a carport, right? The most common solar structure that people are going to run into is probably a carport, which is a shade structure over a parking lot. And carports, while they're a wonderful asset, and, especially if you don't have usable rooftop space, they are more expensive than rooftop solar.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just curious if a customer or a, installer is considering a carport and they want to jump to a Lumos project, what are the selling points of making that leap?
Yeah. So, aesthetics, again, needs to be part of that, demand. So, there's a lot of carport structures out there that are very industrial looking, but, for a lowest dollar per watt perspective, they're a great solution to, utilize underdeveloped solar resources out in parking lots and provide power. But, they don't necessarily look that great. And so, for Class A real estate or the discerning homeowner that wants something that looks good, that's why you're going to choose the Lumos solution, both modules and racking and our structures. We brought that focus of aesthetics that we developed with our modules and, brought that to the structure side as well. So especially with our modern SolarScape designs, we're really providing that high aesthetic solution. So, day one, when you install our carport, it looks great. It's going to look great for the next 20 to 30, plus years versus, maybe a more industrial looking structure will look dated right away and, maybe will detract from the aesthetics of that property. And so, really having that aesthetic in the mix is certainly, typically needed for our style solutions for sure.
And I see on your contact page that you have find a Lumos authorized professional. What is a Lumos authorized professional?
Yeah, so we work directly with installers. We don't sell direct to the end user. We typically don't work through distribution, but we have. We certainly can work through distribution channels. But with our projects being so unique and so structural, it really makes sense to have a direct relationship with our installers. And so that's what that link does, is gets you on board directly with Lumos. We will work with you, directly on the design and integration of our products into your projects. And so, that link right there that you're showing allows solar installers to get on board directly with Lumos. That's our business model. And then it also allows, design professionals and architects to access resources, more technical resources, and, just get you boned up on all of our systems and provide engineering letters and pan files, 3D models, all that good stuff, and work with the design professionals on that side of the equation.
Very good. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like our listeners to know about?
I can't think of anything yet. We're about to launch a new form factor modules at the end of this year. So as you know, the kind of industry standard of the cell size is growing on us. And so that's making the dimensions of our modules grow a little bit as well. They're still going to have the same, kind of unique design elements of LSX and GSX modules that you know today, but in an integrated racking system. So we're going to have the same rail profile for both module types. We're really excited to launch this new vision system here at the very end of this year.
Very good. You mentioned manufacturing. Where are the panels manufactured?
Yeah, currently the modules are made out in San Jose, California, and our aluminum racking is all extruded in Ohio. And then we have structural fabrication facilities here in Colorado, where we actually fabricate the steel and aluminum support structures that you see in our solar scapes, and then also the new solar zones and solar stops.
So are you suggesting that your product is American made, or are there elements like the solar cells that are made overseas?
Yeah, I mean, really, the solar cells are not really made in the USA. Most of the supply chains are in Asia. So we do import the solar cells. The monofacial cells are made in Germany. The bifacial cells are Taiwanese. And we do bring in the cells to our facility in California. And that's where we do, all the lamination and module manufacturing process there. So it's not a fully, made in the USA product. We are sourcing materials from overseas, but most of the construction is done here in the United States.
Yeah, if our listeners don't know this, the vast majority of made in America solar panels are, the panel assembly happens in the US, but the solar cells themselves are made in usually Asia, but as you mentioned, also can be in Europe. The list of companies that make solar cells in the United States is very, very small. You do have companies like First Solar that makes thin film, where they're doing the soup to nuts manufacturing here in the U.S. But it's pretty much a given when you look at American-made panels that they have elements, but a majority of your product is made here in the U.S. So that's also a benefit.
Yeah, definitely a differentiator for us for sure.
Before I ask you how our listeners can reach you, I'm just going to make a couple of announcements, and our listeners can find all of our content here at cesenergy.com/podcast. We encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Just hit that big red button, and please give us a thumbs up. Share it with your friends. I love to get comments from our listeners, either on YouTube or through the website. So please do that. You can also reach me on Twitter, TG Montague on Twitter. And we're doing one or two of these interviews every week, bringing you solar experts like Mark Pruitt, talking about expanding the Midwest solar market. Solar Art with Schaub. And he is a solar artist in Chicago that is breaking ground on many new and unique solar structures. topics like solar grazing. Multi-use solar is a growing phenomenon and a vital part of the solar economy, where you can do things like run sheep on solar farms. And so check that out at cesenergy.com/podcast. I want to thank you, Ryan Schaub, for joining us today. How can our listeners reach you?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. And yeah, I think the best way is to go to our website, lumossolar.com, and that contact us button at the very top. And that's where you can contact Lumos directly, and I can respond and work with your projects.
And I can vouch that you are very responsive and easy to work with. So I would encourage any solar installer or solar professional out there that is looking for a unique solar solution to reach out to Ryan at lumossolar.com. The beauty, the sheer visual beauty is so stunning of these projects that it is truly a game changer. So looking forward to seeing your technology grow here in the United States and internationally. With that, I will let you go, Ryan, and let's grow solar and storage. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Take care.